The next thing I want to ask you is about caffeine. You know, you just said like energy chocolate, right? So what if someone's listening to this, but they don't drink coffee? They feel as though they're not, they're super sensitive, and they might even be sensitive to chocolate, or they think that they're sensitive to chocolate as well because there's quote unquote caffeine. I guess two-part question. Is there caffeine? Is it the same? And would it affect them, or is there some sort of counterbalance because there's also adaptogens? Like how would you break that down?
It's a great question. And I'm actually the perfect case study for this. And I'll
Oh,
explain
good.
what I
Okay.
mean by that
Okay.
in a second.
Okay.
But with cacao, there's a very small amount of caffeine. So if you look at, for example, when we have our cacao powder tested for caffeine content, it's 12.5 milligrams of caffeine per tablespoon of cacao powder. And that's within the range of what you would see in a cup of decaf coffee. So not something anybody would be ever super concerned about. It's on the, I would say, higher end of the decaf coffee range, but still within the range of what you see in a cup of decaf coffee. Then what you see primarily in chocolate is a cousin of caffeine called theobromine. And this is another one that is a stimulant. However, it doesn't affect the central nervous system in the same way that caffeine does. It's processed by a different pathway. So somebody who has a hard time processing caffeine, that doesn't necessarily apply to theobromine. And it builds up in the system slower. So its effect is more gentle and it comes down slower. So it's not as much of a spike and a drop as you might see with caffeine, and it stays in the system longer. So it's all more gentle and more gradual. Nobody has ever experienced a coffee level of caffeine energy with a chocolate bar. It doesn't hit you in the same way. You can get certainly energy from it, and there's a pleasantly stimulating nature to it, but it's never going to hit you like a cup of
Yeah.
actual coffee.
That might be the sugar more so than the quote unquote caffeine in
Right.
there, right?
That too, that too.
Yeah.
So the reason I said I'm a good case study here is that I can't touch coffee. I can't touch green tea. I can't touch yerba mate. It's a real problem for me for
Wow.
two reasons, and they're genetic reasons. One is that I'm a slow caffeine metabolizer. So it hits me in my system, and my body can't get rid of it fast enough. So it just keeps hitting me and hitting me and hitting me.
Mm.
Whereas somebody who's a fast caffeine metabolizer on the other end of the spectrum, they take it, it hits them, it goes in fast, it goes out fast, and they're ready for another cup of coffee 30 minutes or an hour later. And then the other thing is that I have a gene called the COMT gene. And this is something that has benefits and vulnerabilities to it, I would say. And this is because I make certain neurotransmitters just like normal people. And when it comes to dopamine and epinephrine and norepinephrine, I make them just like anybody else, but I don't get rid of them at the same speed. So it's like if you have a freeway with an on ramp that's 3 lanes and an off ramp that's 1 lane. I make them like a normal person. I can't get rid of them fast enough. So I end up with this traffic jam potentially. And so if I consume something that is increasing my production of these, a la caffeine, then it makes it even worse. It's opening up more lanes on the on ramp while the off ramp hasn't changed in size.
Wow.
So you end up with a real issue there because these neurotransmitters, or catecholamines as they're called, become after a while irritants to my nervous system. So if I have caffeine, first day, I'm on top of the world because these are all like flooding my brain. The dopamine's high. I'm super focused. It's incredible. But then the coming down is about 4 or 5 days of feeling really sad afterwards, as these things really irritate my nervous system, which is no fun at all. And it's a combination of those two genes, right? Because not only can I not get rid of those neurotransmitters fast, but I also keep that caffeine around for longer. So it's even having more of an effect, making more neurotransmitters. Thank goodness I'm 100% fine with chocolate and don't get any of these negative situations coming from chocolate because I got to be able to enjoy something.
Right, right, exactly. Wow. I bet a lot of people listening to this that do have a sensitivity are wondering if they have something similar in terms of the genetics, because that would explain it, I'm sure, for them. And I'm pretty sensitive to caffeine. I don't know in terms of, I haven't done any testing in terms of my genes and stuff, but I think I can enjoy like 1 cup of
Yeah.
coffee and be fine. If I do anything more than one, I'm sort of a nutcase.
Mm-hmm.
And I also have that crash, So, but fortunately with chocolate, it's not normally the case. And I do like this too, because I feel like that kind of brings me to the question, how would it be, consuming it at different times of day? Like, would someone
Right.
have to say, oh, well, I can only have it in the afternoon, or I can only have it in the, the middle of the day, so to speak? Or can I have it after dinner and go to sleep and be fine?
And that will be an individual question as well, because like you have different genes that regulate your ability to metabolize caffeine, you also have ones that regulate theobromine metabolism. And so for somebody who notices that they're super sensitive, okay, then maybe you keep your chocolate to before 2 p.m. as
Mm.
I would basically recommend that anybody do with something strong like coffee. Other people who metabolize it very quickly would be great having a tranquility chocolate as their little after dinner treat and don't have any issues with that. So it's individual. And that COMT gene, I would encourage everybody to find out which version of it they have, because there's 3 different versions. There's the one that I have where you can't get rid of them very fast. There's the minus minus version where you get rid of them extra fast. And then there's just the plus minus or the minus plus where you're kind of average. And this, I've spent a lot of time learning about my genetics and how to optimize my health for my genetics. And this one gene, more than anything else, defines my whole reality and life experience, as weird as that may sound,
Wow.
because if you have this gene, you tend to have higher frontal lobe function, more ability to focus and learn things faster, and you have a great filter. So it's pretty rare for me to say something and say, "Oh, I didn't mean to say that." And so it has a lot of benefits to it, but it also has some vulnerabilities that I mentioned. So, for example, if you didn't respect this gene, if I went wild long term on caffeine, or if I had a very, very high stress life that I didn't moderate with supplements and various other practices, it puts you at much higher risk for things like Parkinson's and schizophrenia and bipolar later on, which I certainly don't want to have anything to do with those. So,
Right.
um, this is people sometimes people don't want to get their genes tested because they say, I don't want to give up that power. I don't want to, feel like I'm a victim of my genes. You're not. This is just giving you a roadmap saying, okay, if you take this left turn, here's where you're going to end up. If you take this right turn, there's where you're going to end up. Otherwise, you're just driving without a map and just trying to like rely on your internal sense of direction, which people can get in touch with their bodies and see what works and what not. But having a roadmap kind of helps.
Yeah, it does.